There's a question that haunts every therapy session I've ever witnessed, every late-night conversation I've ever had, every moment of crisis I've ever seen. Am I allowed to disappoint my parents? And here's the answer that will set you free. You're not just allowed, you're obligated. Not because you're selfish, not because you don't love them, but because your life is not theirs to live. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah grew up in Connecticut, in one of those picture-perfect suburban homes where everything looked right from the outside. Her father was a surgeon. Her mother was a lawyer. And Sarah? Sarah was supposed to be both. She went to Yale. Pre-med, of course. She got straight A's. She did everything right. And every night, she cried herself to sleep. Because Sarah didn't want to be a doctor. Sarah wanted to write poetry. But how do you tell your parents, who sacrificed everything, who worked 80-hour weeks, who paid $70,000 a year for your education, that you want to be a poet? How do you say that to people who fled poverty, who built empires, who gave you everything? You don't. So Sarah became a doctor. She got into Johns Hopkins for residency. She married another doctor. She had the life her parents dreamed of. And at 34, Sarah had her first panic attack in the middle of a surgery. Her hands started shaking. She couldn't breathe. She had to be escorted out of the operating room. That night, sitting in her car in the hospital parking lot, Sarah realized something. She had never made a single choice for herself. Not one. Every decision, from her major to her career to her husband, had been made with one question in mind. Will this make my parents proud? Her own soul had never been consulted. Sarah quit medicine. Her parents didn't speak to her for 2 years. Her father told relatives she had thrown her life away. Her mother cried every time they talked. But Sarah started writing. And 3 years later, her first collection of poetry won the National Book Award. Her parents came to the ceremony. They didn't say much, but her father hugged her for the first time in years, and he whispered, "I never knew you could do this." Because he had never asked. Because he had been too busy projecting his own unlived dreams onto her. Carl Jung discovered something that Western psychology tried to ignore for decades. Nothing has a stronger psychological influence on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parents. Every dream your father abandoned to be practical, every passion your mother suppressed to be responsible, every risk they didn't take, every adventure they didn't pursue, every authentic self they buried, all of it becomes an invisible expectation they project onto you. And you, without knowing it, have been carrying the weight of their unlived lives. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus grew up in Detroit. His father worked at the Ford plant for 30 years. Same job, same shift, same life. And Marcus's father had one dream for his son. Don't end up like me. So Marcus went to business school. He got his MBA. He got a job at Goldman Sachs. He made 6 figures by 28. He had the apartment in Manhattan, the suits, the life. And he was dying inside. Because Marcus didn't want to be a banker. Marcus wanted to be a high school teacher. He wanted to coach basketball. He wanted to work with kids in his old neighborhood. But how do you tell your father, who worked 12-hour shifts for 30 years so you could have a better life, that you want to go back to the neighborhood he worked so hard to get you out of? At 32, Marcus quit Goldman Sachs. His father was devastated. "I didn't sacrifice everything so you could throw it away," he said. But Marcus went back to Detroit. He became a teacher. He coaches basketball. He makes $45,000 a year instead of $250,000. And for the first time in his life, Marcus wakes up excited. He goes to bed fulfilled. He's living his life, not his father's unlived dream. 5 years later, his father came to one of his basketball games. He watched Marcus with the kids. And afterward, he said, "I get it now. You're doing what I should have done." Because Marcus's freedom reminded his father of his own prison. And sometimes, that's what it takes for parents to wake up. Here's what Western culture doesn't tell you. The American dream is often the American nightmare. Because it's built on sacrifice. Parents sacrifice for children. Children are supposed to sacrifice for success. Success is supposed to make everyone happy. But it doesn't work that way. Because a life lived for someone else's approval is not a life. It's a performance. And eventually, the performer collapses. Jung called it the shadow, all the parts of yourself you've repressed to be acceptable. Every time you silenced your anger to be the good child. Every time you hid your true passion because it was impractical. Every time you chose security over authenticity. All those rejected parts didn't disappear. They sank into your unconscious, forming your shadow. And that shadow manifests in ways you can't control. Depression, addiction, rage, self-sabotage, chronic illness. Your body keeps the score, and eventually, it demands payment. Let me tell you about Jennifer. Jennifer grew up in a strict Catholic family in Boston. She knew she was gay by the time she was 14, but she also knew that coming out would destroy her parents. So she didn't. She dated men. She got engaged to a nice Catholic boy. She planned a wedding. And 2 weeks before the ceremony, she tried to kill herself. In the hospital, her mother asked, "Why? We gave you everything." And Jennifer finally told the truth. "You gave me everything except permission to be myself." Jennifer called off the wedding. She came out. Her parents disowned her. Her father told her she was going to hell. Her mother cried for months. But Jennifer moved to San Francisco. She found her community. She met her wife. And now, 5 years later, she's happier than she's ever been. Her parents still don't fully accept her. But Jennifer has learned something crucial. Their acceptance is not required for her to live. This is the hard truth that no one wants to hear. You cannot live your life and please your parents. Not if your truth contradicts their expectations. Not if your authentic self threatens their worldview. You have to choose. And if you choose yourself, there will be consequences. There will be guilt. There will be grief. There will be loss. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is a life unlived. And that, as Jung said, is the greatest tragedy of all. Now let me tell you about the 4 prisons that Western culture builds around you, and how to escape each one. Prison 1. The success script. In America, success has a very specific definition. Prestigious university, high-paying job, big house, perfect family. This is the dream. But whose dream is it? Let me tell you about David. David went to Harvard. He became a lawyer at a top firm in New York. He made partner by 35. He had everything the script promised: money, status, respect. And he was miserable. Because David didn't want to be a lawyer. David wanted to be a carpenter. He loved working with his hands. He loved creating things. But his parents, immigrants from China who worked in restaurants for 20 years, had one dream. Their son would be a professional. At 38, David quit law. He moved to Vermont. He started a custom furniture business. His parents were horrified. "We didn't come to America so you could be a laborer," his mother said. But David is happy now. He wakes up at 5 a.m. excited to work. He creates beautiful things. He makes less money, but he's rich in ways that matter. The success script is a trap, because it defines success externally, by what others can see and measure, rather than internally, by what brings you alive. Prison 2. The Marriage Industrial Complex. Western culture has a timeline for your life. Graduate by 22, career by 25, married by 30, kids by 35, retire by 65, die. But what if you don't want that timeline? Let me tell you about Rachel. Rachel is 42 and single, by choice. She's a wildlife photographer who travels the world. She's fulfilled, successful, happy. But at every family gathering, her mother asks, "When are you going to settle down?" As if Rachel's life, full of adventure, purpose, and joy, doesn't count as settled because there's no husband and kids. Rachel finally told her mother, "I am settled, just not in the way you imagined." Her mother cried. She said Rachel was wasting her life. But Rachel knows the truth. She's living her life, not performing someone else's idea of what a life should look like. The marriage industrial complex tells you that you're incomplete without a partner, that your life doesn't really start until you're married, that happiness requires a specific relationship structure. But that's a lie. And millions of people are trapped in marriages they don't want, raising children they weren't ready for, living lives that look right from the outside, but feel dead on the inside. Prison 3. The Debt Trap. Here's something uniquely American. We trap our children in debt, then use that debt to control them. Student loans, medical bills, the expectation that you'll pay back your parents for raising you. Let me tell you about Alex. Alex's parents paid for his college, and they never let him forget it. Every time Alex made a choice they didn't like, they reminded him, "We paid $200,000 for your education." That $200,000 became a chain. Alex felt he owed them his life choices, his career, his relationships, everything. At 30, Alex did something radical. He calculated exactly what his parents had spent on him, and he paid them back. Every penny. It took him 3 years of living in a tiny apartment and working 2 jobs. When he handed them the check, his father was shocked. "We didn't ask for this," he said. "I know," Alex replied, "but I need to be free." His parents were hurt, but Alex was liberated. Because he had broken the invisible contract. We gave you life, so you owe us your life. Prison 4. The Guilt Machine. Western parents, especially immigrant parents, are masters of guilt. They've perfected it into an art form. After everything we sacrificed for you, we gave up our dreams so you could have yours. How can you do this to us? Let me tell you about Maria. Maria's parents came from Mexico with nothing. They worked 3 jobs. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment so Maria could go to college. And Maria became a doctor, just like they wanted. She married a doctor, just like they wanted. She had 2 kids, just like they wanted. And at 40, Maria realized She had never wanted any of it. She wanted to be a social worker. She wanted to help immigrant families like her own. She wanted to work in her community, not in a private practice treating wealthy patients. When she told her parents she was changing careers, her mother said, "So our sacrifice meant nothing?" And Maria had to say the hardest thing she'd ever said. "Your sacrifice gave me the freedom to choose, and I'm choosing this." Her parents didn't understand. They felt betrayed. But Maria finally understood something. Their sacrifice was their choice. Her life is her choice. These are separate things. The tools for liberation. Now, let's talk about practical tools. Because theory is beautiful, but action is what changes lives. Tool 1. The boundary conversation. You need to have the conversation you've been avoiding. The one where you tell your parents, "I love you, but I'm living my life my way." Write it out first. Practice it. Then say it. And when they react, and they will react, hold your ground. Tool 2. The financial independence plan. You cannot be truly free while financially dependent on your parents. Even if they never mention it, the debt creates obligation. Create a plan. Save money. Build your own foundation. Financial independence is psychological independence. Tool 3. The therapy investment. Get professional help. Not because you're broken, but because you're breaking free. A good therapist can help you see the patterns you can't see yourself. In America, we're finally starting to understand. Mental health is health. Therapy is not weakness. It's strength. Tool 4. The chosen family. Find your people. Not your biological family, your chosen family. The people who see you, accept you, celebrate you for who you actually are. In major cities across America, there are communities of people who've walked this path. Find them. You're not alone. Tool 5. The forgiveness practice. Not forgiving your parents, though that may come. Forgiving yourself. For taking so long. For the years you lost. For the person you weren't. Because you didn't know. Now you know. And that changes everything. Let me tell you one more story about Michael. Michael's father was a police officer, a tough guy who believed men don't cry, don't show weakness, don't do soft things like art or music. Michael became a cop too, because that's what his father expected. He hated every day of it. But he did it for 10 years. At 32, Michael quit. He became a dance instructor. His father was disgusted. "What kind of man teaches dance?" he said. Michael didn't argue. He just lived his life. He taught dance. He was happy. He was himself. 5 years later, Michael's father had a stroke. In the hospital, weak and vulnerable for the first time in his life, he said to Michael, "I was wrong. I was so wrong." Because seeing Michael's joy, his authentic, undeniable joy, finally broke through his father's armor. This doesn't always happen. Sometimes parents never change. But sometimes, your freedom gives them permission to examine their own prison. And that's the greatest gift you can give them. Not obedience, but the example of a life fully lived. Now let me tell you the hardest truth. The one that will either break you or set you free. The American paradox. America tells you that you can be anything, but your family tells you that you must be something specific. And these two messages create a psychological war inside you. The land of opportunity becomes the land of impossible expectations. Because if you can be anything, then why aren't you being what your parents want? If success is possible, then why are you choosing something they don't understand? Let me tell you about James. James is black. He grew up in Atlanta. His grandfather was a janitor. His father was a teacher. And James? James was supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer, something that would prove the family had made it. But James wanted to be a jazz musician, and in his family, that was seen as going backward. "We didn't fight through segregation so you could play music in bars," his father said. James became a lawyer. He was good at it. He made money. But every night, he'd go home and play his saxophone alone in his apartment. His real life was happening in those stolen hours. At 45, James had a heart attack. Not severe, but enough to wake him up. In the hospital, he realized he had spent 20 years living a life that was killing him. He quit law. He joined a jazz band. His father didn't speak to him for a year. But James is alive now, really alive, for the first time since he was a teenager. The Immigrant Story. If your parents are immigrants, this is even harder, because their sacrifice is real. They did give up everything. They did work impossible hours. They did suffer so you could have opportunities they never had. And that makes your freedom feel like betrayal. Let me tell you about Priya. Priya's parents came from India with $200 in their pockets. Her father drove a taxi for 15 years. Her mother cleaned houses. They lived in a tiny apartment in Queens. And they had one dream. Their daughter would be a doctor. Priya went to medical school. She became a pediatrician. She did everything right. And she was empty inside. Because Priya wanted to be a filmmaker. She wanted to tell stories. She wanted to create art. At 35, Priya made a documentary about immigrant families. It won awards. It was shown at Sundance. And her parents finally understood. This was her calling. Her mother said, "We wanted you to be safe. We thought doctor meant safe. But we see now, you're safe when you're doing what you love." This doesn't always happen. But sometimes, when parents see your authentic joy, they remember their own dreams. And they realize they don't want you to repeat their sacrifice. They want you to fulfill it by living freely. The 5 stages of liberation. Let me map out what actually happens when you choose yourself. Stage 1. The decision. You decide not to rebel, not to hurt anyone, but to live. This is the hardest moment, because once you decide, you can't unknow it. Stage 2. The announcement. You tell your parents, and they react. Anger, tears, guilt, threats, silence. All of it is their fear. Fear that they failed. Fear that you'll suffer. Fear that your freedom exposes their prison. Stage 3. The wilderness. This is the loneliest time. You've left the old life, but haven't fully built the new one. You doubt yourself. You wonder if you made a mistake. You feel the weight of their disappointment. This is where most people turn back. Don't. Keep walking. Stage 4. The emergence. You start to feel it. The lightness, the energy, the sense that you're finally in your own life. You make decisions that feel right, not just look right. You breathe differently. Stage 5. The integration. You find your people. You build your life. And you realize you can love your parents without living their script. You can honor their sacrifice without sacrificing yourself. Some parents come around. Some don't. But you're free either way. The final truth. Here's what I need you to understand. Your parents will survive your disappointment. They're adults. They have their own lives, their own choices, their own paths. But you will not survive an unlived life. You will not survive 40 years of pretending. You will not survive a lifetime of should have. You will not survive reaching the end and realizing you were never yourself. That is the real death. Not the death of the body, but the death of the soul. Carl Jung said, "The greatest tragedy is not death, but an unlived life." And every day you spend living for someone else's approval is a day you die a little. A day you betray the unique gift you brought to this world. A letter to your future self. Imagine yourself at 80, sitting in a chair, looking back at your life. What does that 80-year-old self want to tell you right now? I'll tell you what they're saying. Do it. Take the risk. Disappoint them. Live your life. Because I'm sitting here with all these regrets, and every single one of them is about the things I didn't do. The life I didn't live. The person I didn't become. Your future self is begging you. Don't waste this life. The choice. You have a choice right now. You can close this video and go back to your life. Keep performing. Keep pretending. Keep dying slowly. Or you can decide, today, now, that you're done. That you're going to live. That you're going to disappoint the people you love most because you love yourself more. And that's not selfish. That's survival. That's sanity. That's the only way to actually live. Your parents gave you life, but they don't get to tell you how to live it. That's your job, your responsibility, your sacred duty. So do it. Make the call. Have the conversation. Take the step. Start living. Because your parents will survive your disappointment. But you won't survive an unlived life. That's the truth. And now you know it. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Let me end with this. There's a man named Robert. He's 75 now. He spent his whole life as an accountant, his father's choice. He married a woman his mother approved of. He had kids because that's what you do. He lived in the suburbs. He did everything right. And now, at 75, he sits in his house and cries because he realizes he never lived. He performed, he obeyed, he pleased, but he never lived. His one regret? I wish I had disappointed them. I wish I had been brave enough to be myself. Don't be Robert. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't reach the end and realize you never began. Live now. Disappoint them now. Be yourself now. Because this is your one life, your only life, and it's too precious to waste on someone else's script. Your parents will survive, but you won't survive an unlived life. Choose yourself. Choose life. Choose now. That's the message. That's the truth. That's your liberation. Now go and live.